I'll let Mr. Montgomery sit down first, and I'll call to order the Finance Committee for August. Thank everybody for being here. I hope everybody enjoyed their July vacation. We have a very busy agenda tonight. We have a number of consent items as well as general agenda items. As always, we will begin with the consent agenda, and I will ask any of the council members or mayor up here if anyone would like anything pulled. Ms. Burke?
Yes, I would like C2,
C2,
5, and 6.
C5, and C6. Ms. Adams? Or I'll let you look a minute.
Yeah. I'm still in the process of locking on, but C17.
C17. I'm just letting everybody look a minute.
C2 and C30.
She already had C2, so we'll do C30. We go that high up?
Yeah.
Whoa.
We had
yeah,
July
we do.
off, remember?
Yeah. C92.
C11.
C11. I'm going to hold a minute just to be sure everybody. Yes, Mr.
Should I be
Clark.
clear that C43 has been removed from the agenda? Somebody tell me that. If not, C43.
There is no 43.
There's a C32.
It's a C32.
It's the highest.
It's finance.
I'm going to say yes.
It says, yeah, this is a written copy that I have. Demolition of structures over 65%.
No, that's community development.
Oh, that's tomorrow.
Yeah, that's tomorrow.
Got it. Sorry.
And
But I will talk to the chairman of the general government.
will-
Tell him, Mr. Chairman, will you please remove that tomorrow?
C27.
I will see what that.
C27. Okay, I think everybody's had a chance to look at it. Can I get a motion to approve the balance?
Move for approval on the balance.
Second?
We have a motion second to approve the ballots. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed likewise. Let me go over it and I will do them in numerical order. I have C2, 5, 6, 11, 17, 27, and 30.
Still got it.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're supposed to do the electronic voting? I'm sorry.
Where is that?
Do I need,
We have a motion to second to approve the consent agenda, and now it will come up in just a second, and we will vote on it.
do we need to sign in?
We need the motion.
See paper already.
Hang on a minute. Wait till it comes up.
It's gotta
Mine
come
hasn't
up.
come
I just
John,
have
go back.
request to
I'm
speak
not
in the
on the
corner.
committee,
I mean,
Got it.
I made a motion to accept the balance of the agenda, the consent agenda.
Okay, hang on just a minute.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I had not left the
But
meeting.
all of us, we had the same thing.
Okay, just hang on a minute. We're all getting organized here.
Electronic efficiency.
Read your instructions.
Better go through technology.
I had it done the old way in about 30 seconds, but we're waiting to connect. I'm still connecting.
You had a button.
Be a lot simpler, wouldn't it?
Well, I always do a long one.
Y'all just bear with us. We're still connecting. Go back in.
We're gonna charge him.
Just got to check.
I'm wondering, did he plug it up last night?
Hey, there we go. All right, now, who made the motion? Would you hit motion?
I did already, so I gotta come back out? Okay, yeah, and
Need a second.
Need a second? Have you seconded? I'm gonna rule this out of order.
Join
We're
the
gonna get
meeting?
going. What's that?
You joined the meeting?
Several times.
Yeah.
yeah. You want me to withdraw?
She gonna clear it out?
Oh,
Reboot.
So we're gonna restart. We're gonna boot it back. We're gonna reboot.
There we go. Now, well, you hit the motion button again. Now, will you hit the second?
Okay.
Do it again. Hit it again.
No, it's on the screen.
Is it? All right, everybody vote.
I just love technology.
Okay, everyone was in favor. All right. Well, I got that behind me. All right. Wait a minute.
Okay.
We will now go to the consent. We'll do C2 first. Excuse me. If the secretary would read C2, please.
Item C2, resolution approving the allocation of revitalizing urban commercial areas 3 funds for the 14th Street, New Walkertown Road area.
Ms. Burke, this is yours.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I said C2, that was in my preparation, but the chairman, the council person, I've had a conversation, so I don't have any questions.
Okay.
He answered mine. Thank you.
All right. Why don't you just give us a quick on this one anyway, since it's been on the screen?
Certainly. Good afternoon, Chairman Clark, Mayor Joines, members of the committee.
Good afternoon.
This item approves the allocation of RUCA 3 funding for the 14th Street, New Walkertown Road, RUCA area, and the amount of $260,000. We have received a request from 2600 NWR LLC for the rehabilitation and upfit of the former Church's Chicken site located at the corner of 14th Street in New Walkertown. The owners are looking to attract a Zesto franchise, a fast food franchise specializing in hamburgers and ice cream to that location. And the funds would be split 50% low interest and 50% matching for that $260,000. And representatives from the LLC are here if there are questions about the item, and happy to take any questions.
Do we have any questions for anyone up here? Can I get a motion? Oh, you have a question or a motion?
Yes,
Ms. Adams has a question.
thank you. What is the balance left in the RUCA fund?
It's approximately $1 million is remaining from RUCA 3.
Okay. And a comment, I'm always glad to see when we can have public-private partnerships, whereas we're helping to revitalize neighborhoods. I remember when that churches was built, I'm sure most of us do, and it's been there a long time without an owner or anyone, and it's gone down, very blighted. So it'd be great for the people in the community to see this structure come back to life. Okay. I move that we approve this item C2.
I have a motion on C2. Do I have a second?
I'm on second for the chair.
Yeah, that's fine.
Councilperson probably want to say something.
Well, I would, but we have a motion and a second on the floor now. Are there any questions or comments? Mr. Montgomery, do you have?
Just a comment, and it just echoes the comments that Councilmember Adams has stated. We worked over the last several months with the group here to move this project forward, and then even talking with staff, I think this is probably one of the best put together packages for RUCA application. I think the staff have looked at as well, and so I'm looking forward to what we'll see happen at this location.
Okay. Will someone please second? Did you hit, Ms. Burke?
I second it, so,
Did you hit the second?
nah.
Now we got it. I would say I did review it, and I do think this is it's being done the right way. The folks coming in here have 15, 20 years, 30 years experience in the food business, so I thought it was a good one. And I will tell you, I am old enough to remember when there were Zestos
Oh, definitely.
way back when. Ms. Burke?
I was going to say part of that, our Northeast is right across from that area. And one of the concerns I discussed with the council person about the traffic coming out. When they're coming out of the place, it's a problem when they turn left because we just have the red light and caution light. And the state should be requested that they look at that to make sure traffic coming and going, the people who are coming to get their lunches will be able to get out for safety.
Okay.
That was my concern.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. We have a motion and a second. There we go. If everyone will please vote. I'm sorry, I got to look at that screen. That is approved. Thank you very much. We will now go to C5.
Item C5, consideration of items relating to Federal Transit Administration, Job Access Reverse Commute, Section 5307 funds for fiscal year 2016 and fiscal year 2017, allocation and reallocation.
Ms. Burke, was this yours? Ms.
It's 5 and 6.
Okay, Ms. Burke, you go right ahead.
Yes, what I want, city manager, whoever will just explain that, because sometimes citizens see this, but it needs to be defined clearer than what we say.
Mr. Turner, you going to comment on this one?
Certainly, Mr.
Thank
Chairman, members of the committee. This item is to provide job access reverse commute services that are provided by private sector firms that the city does an annual invitation for them to propose to us. And if their proposals are accepted and reviewed by the city's grantee agency process as well as the transportation review process, then the city provides funding to these agencies to provide transportation services to disadvantaged individuals.
Thank you very much. So this is a pass-through type of...
That is correct, passing through federal funds.
Yeah, it's often the case with the city, federal government requires a municipality or some government organization to take delivery of the money, so to speak, and then we pass it on.
I
Ms. Burke?
understand that clearly. When you say job access, explain that a little clearer.
Transportation from where they live to services that they would need, including jobs.
Now, do we make it so they really, who we're talking about, really get those jobs? Do you have any type of information from the transit to show that folks who need this, they are not having problems where they have to catch the bus coming and going?
These are actually rides provided by people who come and pick them up. So we'll get you some report information on how this service works, Ms. Burke.
I think that would be wise because there are some people who still don't understand that.
Sure.
And there are some who still complain about it, the people who pick them up. And another
Yes, ma'am. You got the floor.
With this, for people who like have handicap problems, let's for instance, some of the folks who've had strokes, there's a place downtown that they go, and I've been told by an individual that they have to wait a long time. When you get all of that, I like to see the detailed information on is it really comfortable for the people, or they've been made not comfortable in using this service.
Certainly, we'll look into it and get you that information.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McIntosh, you got, Mr. Adams, go ahead.
I think I always bring this up when this comes to us. I'm a big proponent of customer satisfaction and how do we know if this is working. We sign off on a lot of things, everybody knows that, but do we actually go and find out whether the monies that we are signing off on and the services, and this is nothing against the businesses, it's just a matter of finding out whether this is, like Ms. Councilmember Burke was saying, whether this is really taking place on most of them, or one of them, it says these services are available 24/7 days a week to low-income employment and seeking employment. Again, how do we know these people are being picked up? I mean, they can give us numbers, but I'm wondering, does anybody ever go out and get on the call, make an appointment, tell them you're going to some jobs, 2 or 3 people, and we find out whether this is really working? Because we already know that we have questions about our transit authority as well as our Trans-A. So this goes back to when we were having those discussions. How does this back up to these type agencies that are also receiving federal funds to help our low income or people that are unemployed and or handicapped and disabled? That's what I need to know.
So, Mr. Turner, I think it'd be nice if we could maybe get a little more information and how this relates to Trans-Aid.
Certainly.
Okay.
And we'll evaluate the option or concept of a secret shopper, as Councilmember Adams was
Okay.
talking about.
All right, McIntosh.
My question revolves around funding. We are at this point voting to pay for this, and yet we're dependent on federal funds. What's the source and the timing of the funding that we'll be reimbursed with or we'll be passing through? Because it seems to me like we're putting ourselves on the hook, and we've run into a lot of situations over the last couple of years of very, very slow delivery from the federal government. And what's our risk level in committing to this?
The risk level is low. The timing is the issue that we've had in the past. We've almost always gotten the 5307 funds, which is the source of these federal funds. But the issue has been how timely the feds have been in getting us those funds. We've had difficulties in the past with them coming in the year that we've expended them, for instance.
We feel pretty good with the new administration and a new HUD director. I mean,
No comment.
okay. I have concerns about that. I mean, we're in a new era here, so I'm hoping we're not sticking our neck out too far on this.
Have they paid the last year's? Are we current?
I don't know if they paid the last year, they paid the year before that, but I'm not sure about last year. I'll
Let's
go back
include that in your comments.
Certainly.
Because I think there are other, maybe it's the transportation that we're the further on for our regular bus system. They're 15, 18 months behind, something like that.
Yeah, we received 15's allocation in June of this year, right before the end of the fiscal year. So they're a little over a year behind now. It's better than when they were 2.5 years behind.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we're going to get some more information from us, both explaining this program, how it relates to some other kind of, well, Trans-Aid, but other type programs, and then Mr. McIntosh's comment on funding. And I do know we've had chronic issues in the regular bus system. As you said, one time we were, what, 2.5 years behind? And now we're just a little near it. Ms. Burke, do you have another comment?
Yes, this is an indirect comment concerning the transit. And while we're looking at that, you need to look at how clean they're keeping it and how safe they're keeping it. And I think it's not really business-like when you have a transit system and citizens have to not have nice bathrooms to use, they're not keeping them clean, and also they don't feel they're safe. And this is not anything new to this city. It has been reported before. And just within 2 weeks ago, the people who use it, when some of them leave home during the day and they go back and they need to use the bathroom, they cannot use it because it is dirty, it is not clean. And I'm going to say it again, it's not anything that's new, so the question would be, since we do have something to do with the transit, how often do we check behind them as far as the cleanliness and the safe going and coming?
Councilmember, Mr. Taylor is looking at that as part of the initiatives, so trying to address issues with the overall cleanliness of the facility. The bathrooms are a specific concern. And he, in fact, took a trip down to look at another facility down in Charlotte, which is a facility identical in design to ours, just much larger. And so we're trying to get some ideas for how to learn from others as to what we can do to make ours better. So we're working on a solution that we hope to implement in the next few months.
Mr. Chairman, see, they don't play in Charlotte. When you're not there unless you're supposed to be catching a bus. But the reason they have been effective with theirs is because they have a police group that takes care of that particular area. So they know that they cannot just hang around and do the kinds of things that are not proper. All you have to do is go to the CIAA, and you don't see the folks in there. If you catch a bus, that's when you're in there. But I was told the reason that one has been effective, they have I don't know what you call them, but a part of the police department, a division that takes directly with the care and the upkeep about people coming and going.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments on this? Do I have a motion on it?
Move for approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? If you do, please push the buttons.
I did.
Let's see what comes up. We do have a motion and a second. If everyone will please vote when it comes up. And that is approved. That was C5. We will now go to C6. If the secretary could read that, please.
Item C6, consideration of items related to Federal Transit Administration enhanced mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities, Section 5310 funds for fiscal year 2016 and fiscal year 2017 allocation and reallocation.
Mr. Turner, could you comment on what this is and how it relates to the previous C5?
Mr. Chairman, this is actually providing funding to 3 different agencies. The last item provided funding for just one, and it is also to provide service for those who are disadvantaged, specifically using the federal transit program called Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities, and it's coming out of 5310 funds. So
it's a different,
not job focused, it's disability.
First one was job-related, this is more disability-related, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Burke?
I was going to ask a person with a disability, what I need to understand, what kind of time do they give me if I'm in a wheelchair or whatever it may be? How do you make it, how does that affect, if I was in a wheelchair, I'm a disabled person, so tell me a little bit more.
These are private service providers, so we'll check with them about what their individual policies are regarding that and bringing that information back to Councilmember
Okay,
Burke.
thank you. I'm through, Mr. Chairman.
Any other, Ms. Adams?
Again, just as you said, the same questions and concerns I had about item 5 applies to item 6 as well. Again, I just want everyone to understand where we are with TransAid in particularly. And when we asked about what other agencies and organizations that receive taxpayer dollars, how sustainable are they, efficient, productive, and how they should be working with us, TransAid, and we should be working with them, because again, we're looking at the same targeted audience of customers, and this should have helped us with this issue we had with citizens concerned about getting where they need to go if they were physically handicapped. So that's what I want to know, because look at this money.
I need to
Yes,
ask
ma'am.
my question. I discussed with the city manager, people with disabilities who ride TransAid, why we are not coordinating with the health people instead of just seeing one person riding when there may be 10 or 15 with the same appointment at that particular area. And why aren't they not coordinated that in a better way? Because we are not really spending our money as we should. And that's one other thing I'd like to have added, sir.
All right, any other questions or comments? Mr. Turner, I know, related to Ms. Burke's comment, I know the TransAid folks, we had a report, and that may have been in the Public Works Committee, probably was not here, maybe 18 months ago about, I guess, an audit we'd had from the federal government on it and improvements we've made. It might be at an appropriate time, and I don't know when that is, to get an update on it.
Certainly.
Okay. Do I have any more questions or comments? Can I get a motion?
I move for approval with the added report to come
Yeah.
back to us.
Okay. And look at the screen. We have a motion and a second. You should be able to vote in a minute. Body, please vote. And that is approved. Thank you all very much. We will now go to the next item, which is C11. If the secretary could read that, please.
Item C11, resolution approving a contract with Dell Marketing LP for laptop computers in the amount of $103,869.
Ms. Adams, was this yours?
Yes, just wanted to know what happens to the computers that we're taking out of the cars.
I don't know exactly what we'll do with these. That's really more with the police IT, but in the past, we've used them for spares. We've made donations and we've surplused them. But really, it's a combination of 3 or 4 past we've taken with all our equipment. Really depends on the life expectancy of what's left. I know in IS, what we're pulling out are 7, 8 years, so we're usually using them for parts or working for the Goodwill, for example. I don't know the age of the laptops and police, but I expect they're probably getting up in age as well. That's something I could work with IT and police to give a report on.
Thank you, but can we going forward, Mr. Garrity and the department at least bring us some type of follow-up report when we are doing items like this? Again, the community has the perception that certain folks get access to our hand-me-downs and certain people don't. So we got to keep this process transparent too, so that everybody gets an opportunity, whether we are taking them as parts, we need to show that. And if we're giving them away, we need to allow the community to be able to access this, and not just organizations who normally get a lot of donations anyway. So
I might suggest I actually did a report about 1.5 years ago on this whole matter for council, and I'll work with police IT and our department. We could refresh that and give you an
Thank you.
update.
That'd be very good.
thank you.
Okay.
Okay, can I get a motion on this, please?
Move for approval.
Is there a second? There's a second. Everybody hold tight. And we'll vote in just a minute here. Okay, if everybody please vote. That is approved. Thank you very much. We will now go to, that was C11. We will now go to C17. If the secretary will read that, please.
Item C17, resolution approving renewal with RMJ Technologies for automated vehicle location services in the amount of $990,000 and $990,666.
Ms. Adams, is this yours?
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. Well, y'all can both come.
Go ahead.
I just pulled this to, since we had a little difficulty with our technology today, reading through this and understanding the program, this to me is technology that works really well for us. And I'd asked the city manager, and he said y'all are going to come back with some numbers later on in the year to talk about the cost savings associated with this expenditure. It looks like a big amount of money, but my sense is that this probably pays for itself and then some.
Yes, I'm sure I'll
Decreased
work with
accidents.
James Mitchell on that. We've
Yeah.
talked with Ben about that as well.
I pulled it just to highlight it as a success story.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner, would you like to comment while you're here?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I think the AVL system is a success story. It certainly saved us money in terms of fuel efficiency. It's reduced speeding. It's reduced idling. But there are also some less quantifiable benefits to it. We get a call from someone saying a city truck hit my fence. And we can go in there and look and see, in fact, there was no city truck anywhere near this fence. So there are benefits to supervisors tracking and routing crews, the risk management side, and we'll be bringing that item back in November with a full report.
Ms. Adams?
Yes, 2013, I would like to say that I had a hand in that. Like citizens that ride around the city, I was riding around the city, and this was before 13, that I directed the city manager and staff, Mr. Turner, to let's go look for a logistics application for our vehicles that can help us with idling and gas and other things that, as he said, that we can benefit from. And I knew this was going to be a win-win for us. So I just want to point out I'm glad, and I'm looking forward to the savings, ching-ching, that we might be getting behind this. I'm proud of this.
Okay.
Ms.
Burke?
You go back and look at the minutes, you will find that some of us also are asking about that.
Very good.
Yes.
Okay, can I get a motion on this, please?
I move for approval.
Push the button. Everybody hold tight. See who the winners are. We have a motion and a second. Please vote when it comes up.
It's good practice for Jeopardy.
Okay, that is approved. Thank you very much. Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you. The next item is C27. Would the secretary read this one, please?
Item C27, resolution authorizing a change order to increase the construction contract in the amount of $141,455 for work on the Benton renovation project located in the North Ward.
Mr. Turner, can you just give us an update, and then we'll answer any questions we have?
Mr. Chairman, these are changes that were necessary to get us to where we are with the Benton, such things as the data closet, lighting, and other features of the facility that were unforeseen at the time the last contract and change order was approved.
Okay. Ms. Adams?
Yes. Again, I want to say great job to everybody involved on our convention center. I think the Benton is a stellar project for the city. We knew when we voted back in 16 February, well, last year, January, when we had to come back and ask for the $500,000 for the contingency fund, because we knew there were other things starting to come that we hadn't planned for, we didn't know until we got in. I'm wondering, with the balance of the contingency and knowing that there are still, Mr. Rao, things that we got to go and finish, are those items that we know, the finished work still has to be done on some of the things that we didn't quite get right in order for the opening. Will those things, costs be coming out of the contingency, or will they basically be with what we contracted the contractor for?
Councilmember Adams, my understanding is that those punch list items are items that the contractor will have to correct before we'll release final payment. So I wouldn't anticipate that those types of costs would be, we would be tapping into the contingency to pay for those. I think this is part of the closing of the project to take care of those punch list items. So the $141,000 is all that we've utilized of that $500,000.
Okay, but I'm saying those things that are unfinished in the project, such as some of the things I pointed out to you and the city manager.
Correct. So
that's part of the actual contract, not contingency stuff.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So do we foresee right now with your communications with the contractors any unforeseen things that may be coming at us that we don't know yet, or some items that we think that may be coming that this contingency fund balance may have to be used for?
I'm not aware of anything that we would require the use of the contingency. The items that you mentioned about the paneling, about the metal strips on the Cherry Street side of the building, all that would be part of the current contract. The punch list items, like I said, I think will be worked through as part of the closing of the project. I'm not aware of any unforeseen issues that would require us to tap into that contingency.
So that money, that balance will be there for us to use for any other things that do come up with the Benton as we move down the road, per se?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there was a follow-up on Councilmember Adams. What is the status of the bridge, the connector bridge between the parking lot and the cost of that? And are we going to need some of this contingency money for that?
The skywalk?
Yes, skywalk.
The skywalk is currently in design. I think we're anticipating putting it out to bid in September with receiving bids and probably bringing an action item to council in October. The plan has been to do that work between Thanksgiving and the beginning of January, because that's a slow period for convention center operations.
We'd allocated how much money for the skywalk?
We allocated a little over $300,000, and that was part of the $1.9 million that the council approved back early 2006.
So we may want to hold that surplus reserve for skywalk till we clear that out. Yeah.
Mr. McIntosh?
First, I want to say what an amazing job was done on the project. I mean, it looks phenomenal. I've gotten tons of people talking about how great the finished product looked. And it was done in a manner in which we had to work around all the business that was going on. So I think it's overall an amazing job. We've hit some financial struggles in this, and I think it all comes back to having a sole source bidder. We had one person to go to, and I just think it's always difficult to get your money's worth when you've got only one person bidding on it. And I think a lot of our financial hiccups in this have been related to that. So hopefully we won't find ourselves in that situation very often.
But this is the second time we've come back to do some add-ons, and it's a lot less this time than last time. So it looks like we're zeroing in, and as Mr. Larson said, I think we need to be a little careful till we see what the numbers come in on the bridge. Yes, sir.
I think there's one important thing, too, that we continue to entertain the public in that building. You know, we didn't shut it down entirely. And we restricted the contractor in the sense of how he could work in certain areas. And I'm sure that had a cost to the project, but it also was a huge benefit, I think, to the city to be able to continue to entertain in those spaces.
It is very difficult to use something while you're renovating it.
Exactly.
For all my folks on Pine Valley Road, we're basically redid a road while people still living there and that stuff.
Good job.
Okay.
Move for approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second? Let's see. Who had the quickest finger? Ms. Burke, you seconded. Thank you. If everyone will please vote. That is approved. Thank you. We will now go to the last consent item, which is C30. If the secretary please read that.
Item C30, resolution authorizing fee simple acquisition by the North Carolina Department of Transportation relating to the US 421 Business 40 pavement reconstruction, bridge replacement, and interchange modification project phase 2, and pursuant to NCGS 160A 274, located in the south and north wards in the amount of $363,700.
Would you give us a 2-minute introduction of what we got going on here?
Sure. Chairman Clark, Mayor Joins, members of the council. Dennessee DOT, as you are well aware, is in the process of acquisitions for the Business 40 project. The city does own some parcels related to that, and also there are some parcels on 8th Street that near the intersections of Cherry, Oak, and Trade. They're also going to be widened and intersection improvements due to traffic and increased traffic in that area. So some of these parcels that are coming before you today also include the area around 8th Street. A total of $363,700. There are 7 parcels that we're bringing today, and I'd be happy to answer any more questions.
Ms. Adams, you had a question?
Yes, the parcels in the North Ward, 8th Street, how is this going to affect the public safety building? And I also thought, and maybe, I don't know, I thought that there were businesses or somebody was already interested in parcel 163. Maybe I'm wrong, 155, 163. But again, I just basically wanted to understand how this will affect the public safety building.
Okay. Yes, some of these are in the area of the Public Safety Center. None of these involve total takes where there will be an entire lot taken. These do involve some small fee simple acquisitions, some temporary construction easements, and permanent utility easements. There won't be any effect on the Public Safety Center building itself. There will be some takings for the road widening along the grassy strip there on 8th Street. The parcel that will have the biggest effect actually will be that parcel 155, which is the parking lot on the north side of 8th Street, and that will have about 10 feet cut off of it, and there will be some parking spaces lost in that. This acquisition that NCDOT is coming to us with would apply regardless of the owner. If there was a future owner, they would need the property just as much as they do now. NCDOT has had this appraised by an independent appraiser, and they looked pretty closely at the fact that we were going to be losing parking spaces and compensation for those parking spaces. And not only that, but any future owner, if it was not the city, they took into consideration the fact that there were damages, the remainder, and it would have a negative impact on any owner in the future who wanted to build on that property. And all that really was taken into consideration. But that parking lot there is really the one that's going to really lose something in the 8th Street area. The others are really just fringe and some shrubbery and so forth that can be replaced.
And on the Marshall Street side, that right there before you turn left on 8th Street,
yes.
What is that? They're just widening it, or what? What are they doing there?
Widening and intersection improvements both.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McIntosh, you have a comment?
Can you talk just for a minute or two about the process and how the numbers are arrived at? It's not just your everyday residential appraiser that goes out and comes up with numbers on these. Can you just kind of walk through?
No, it's appraising commercial properties in general are much more difficult and more complicated than just residential houses where you have a lot of comparable sales. And NCDOT has a very detailed plan for submittal that appraisers who are engaged by them to do these appraisals that have demonstrated over the years expertise in doing non-traditional type appraisals. And these appraisals, really all of them, the basis of the appraisal is still comparable sales, where sales of comparable land, since all of these are vacant parcels, where sales of vacant land parcels are arrived at a value, and then depending on what type of right in ownership they're taking, whether it be a fee simple or a temporary construction easement, these are valued accordingly. And once the independent appraiser that NCDOT engages submits them to NCDOT, then they have several review processes where NCDOT staff actually review them and have guidelines they have to go to, and then offers are subsequently made to property owners, in this case, to the city. And
then once that appraisal reaches your office, your guys go through it?
When that appraisal reaches my office, I'm a North Carolina certified general real estate appraiser, over 20 years of experience in all types of property. And I really review that. And really, most of the time when appraisers doing NCDOT projects look at the appraisals, if they're going to err anywhere, it's usually on the side of the property owner because, or I don't say err, if they're going to give the benefit of the doubt to anyone, it's typically the property owner because NCDOT doesn't want to have to go through eminent domain any more than the city does in projects it has. And so typically the offers that are made, well, definitely NCDOT is in agreement with them, but usually, again, they're, everything being equal, they'll favor the property owner to try to move the project along.
Then I've got a question for City Manager. Where's that money, where do those proceeds go?
Councilmember McIntosh, typically, unless council designates them, they just fall to the general fund under sale of surplus property. And this council occasionally has designated where they go. That's a decision of council, but without any designation, they just go to the general fund.
And that was, did we anticipate that, during our budget process? Were we expecting?
Ben, do you know how much we budget for? We probably didn't anticipate this one. No, this is an unusual amount for us to, as far as sale of surplus property, right?
The budget's typically just based on historical receipts.
Right. One-time occurrences are not forecast. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Larson first, and then Mr. Montgomery.
This sort of follows up on Councilman McIntosh in the sense of disposition of the funds. I've sat here now for 6 months, and I've noticed we've sold several pieces of property and liquidated basically a real asset. And I'm wondering if the council should consider the reinvestment of these real estate funds into a separate fund for, say, parks acquisition or some other direct real estate aspect that we have to undertake. And I don't think that's maybe for decision, but maybe staff could look at that and see if there's what the ramifications of allocating sale of real estate property to reinvest in real property that the city has need of, fire stations, parks and rec, items like that we know and we have to struggle periodically for budgets for, and yet we chip away 200,000, 80,000, whatever funds come in, and maybe we should look at reinvesting those in the future in real estate assets.
Mr. Montgomery.
I'd agree with Councilman Larson in reference to his inquiry in terms of how we allocate. The only other area I can think we've done that with is particularly with the franchise taxes on sweepstakes, that when those come, we designated that back into some type of reinvestments in the areas in which they existed in an attempt to put those dollars back in neighborhoods. And I think that's similarly what Councilmember Larson is referencing. But more so, what I would ask here, and this is something that has little to do with the acquisition, but more specifically, if we can talk to NCDOT specifically around pedestrian access and safety at the intersection of Trade and Martin Luther King. With the increase of activity on the north side of Martin Luther King, there continues to be some concern amongst business owners and property owners in terms of how people are able to cross the street, both at this intersection and at the intersection at Liberty. And so if we can continue to have some conversation there in terms of how safe those intersections are. And if they're going to be doing some improvements, maybe there's an opportunity to make sure we increase that safety.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments?
Move for approval.
Push the magic button. There we go.
Freeze.
When I ask for a motion to approve, you just go ahead and hit the button and then say at the same time we got it. It's been seconded. Motion's approved and seconded. Please vote. Okay. Let me just make a comment because this is the committee that also handles the budget. Once a year we do put together a comprehensive budget where it kind of all comes together, our needs, our wants, desires, and funding availability, et cetera. And I do know in the last bond referendum, we did have specific monies in there for parkland acquisition. Now, we put in a sum. You're never quite sure where you're going to spend it. It turned out we've actually spent all of it so far in Ms. Adams' ward. We bought a small piece of land, and then we bought the golf course.
126 acres? What did we get? 165.
I will say, in that case, you can't necessarily project that they were going to close the course and it was going to be available for sale, and the North Carolina Conservatory was going to come in and help buy some of the floodplain land. So there's always some unknowns, but we do budget. We did budget in the bond referendum, and I always encourage everybody doing the budget season. That's when we look at all that, we put it together and hopefully come up with a budget that makes sense for everybody as far as what we want to do with the money and what we don't want to do with the money. So I do think there's a method to the madness. I will say I'm reluctant to set up any more specific funds. We only got about 40 now, I think. It's not an exaggeration. Am I pretty close?
Yes. Yeah.
We got a 9/11 fund. We've got a cemetery fund. We've got, just keep on going down the list. And the trouble when you restrict it, some of those funds have some nice balances, but we're very limited because we have self-restricted that money. And I think the appropriate time to address a lot of these is when we budget on what we want to spend money on, and everybody gets their say-so at that time. Anyway, that is all for the consent. And I know there was a lot of items on there, so it took us a little long. We do have 3 items on the general agenda, and we will just start with G1.
Item G1, information regarding options for using bond premium proceeds.
Ms. Saunders, will you please explain to everybody how we ended up with a little extra money?
I will. Good afternoon, Chairman Clark, Mayor, members of the committee. In 2014, City of Winston-Salem voters authorized a $139,200,000 bond referendum. We monitor capital spending on an ongoing basis, and we issue or we borrow the money as we need it. In March of 2016, the city issued $54,665,000 of general obligation bonds that were authorized from the 2014 referendum. At that point in time, we sold those bonds at a $5.3 million premium because of the low interest rate environment. And what that means is that the premium represents an amount that an investor pays up front to get a higher coupon on the back end for their bonds. So basically, they're paying our debt service up front. So that's money we have available to pay.
Do you remember what the average interest rate was on that?
About 2.34, something less than 2.5%.
2.4,
Yeah,
okay,
it was in the
thank
low
you.
twos. It was in the low twos at that point.
All right, keep going.
So our debt service fund at that point in time, our debt service fund had the capacity to pay our debt service without using that specific $5.3 million premium. So council at that time approved a list of bond projects, which is in Exhibit A, of different needs that were needed at that point in time. And of that amount, I think there's about $117,000 left of that $5.3 million that was actually used on specific projects. In June, this past June of 2017, we again went out to the bond market to borrow another $59 million. And at that point in time, again, the interest rates are still very low. The average true interest cost on the June bonds was 2.64%. So still in a very low market. And just for information, when I project very conservatively, more like 4%, because you never know exactly, we're going so far in the future, what the rates will be at that point in time. So as looking at our debt service projection for the future, we still are at a point that we can pay our debt service because of this low interest rate environment, and that leaves the premium available for a couple different choices that we've outlined in the following memo. 1, use it for the debt service fund, or 2, use it to specifically pay for projects. So I've created a chart of the debt service fund that basically looks at 3 scenarios. The first one is the current projection. There's no premium in the debt service fund. We pay our debt service cost, and you can see.
Can we get that chart? You look at this chart in the memo. Can we get that on the screen?
I don't know if I can on the screen.
The trend line.
The trend line. It's a green, red, and
I don't
blue.
Blue.
Well, can we do that? No, I'm not that here.
This is an important chart. You can, but that's upside down for all of us. There we go. Anybody y'all can make that a little bigger? There.
There we go.
Whoa.
I got it. Looks better back there.
Move it up. There you go.
There you go. Okay.
That's pretty good now.
So
Okay.
the blue line that you see is our current projection of the debt service fund. And if you remember, we increased taxes 2.5 cents for the $139.2 million in authorization. So that's why you see the influx at the very beginning. And we go down to year 23. So our principal payments kind of level off and it starts moving back up. So the red line is our current debt capacity without putting the premium in. We could actually issue today $15 million within our current scenario, and it falls within our fund balance policy. So you see it drops down to a little less than $5 million, but that's still within our policy that we could use in our current pro forma $15 million, or we could actually issue $15 million. If we put the premium in the debt service fund, that increases our capacity for a future bond referendum to $35 million. Okay? And then one other point to keep in mind is that for every $30 million of debt service, it takes 1 penny of the tax rate to pay for it.
So what you're saying, if we were to leave it in here and not spend it, we would be able to borrow $35 million
With no tax increase.
With no tax increase?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Keep going, please.
All right. And so from there, I'm actually going to turn it over to City Manager Ben Rao, and he's going to go through more of the projects. And
Okay.
Answer any questions.
Good afternoon, Chairman Clark, Mayor Joines, members of the City Council.
Good afternoon.
So the second option would be to actually utilize the bond premium proceeds to address either potential issues with our remaining 2014 bond projects or to address some new capital needs that have been identified over the last year or so. So the first option there would be increasing project contingency for the remaining 2014 projects, and this would be mainly for projects that we haven't contracted out the construction yet. That would include Happy Hill Park, the Public Safety Center renovations, Old Salem infrastructure, Kimberly Park, and the Metal Art Drive widening project. And in addition to that, some other needs that have been identified recently include, of course, the development of Lone Creek Park. We've acquired the land. Some of these bond premium proceeds could be used to start to develop that into a more active park. Also, acquisition of land off of Highway 150 and Clemensville Road for development of a park there off of Sides Road. Also, some additional development money for housing, particularly multifamily housing needs. The full $6 million that was part of the $10 million housing bond order has been committed. So the remaining $4 million in that order is designated for the TURN program. So the bond premium proceeds could be used to fund some additional housing development projects. And then finally, street resurfacing. There was some discussion during the budget deliberations about the need to do more street resurfacing. The FY 17-18 budget includes $3.5 million for street resurfacing, which includes two-thirds bonds, our anticipated 17-18 PAL bill allocation, and then some unused PAL bill funds from last fiscal year that are carrying over into this fiscal year. But we could also, the council could also choose to appropriate some of the proceeds for street resurfacing. So that pretty well sums up some identified needs. If you flip to page 4, one possible recommendation would be to program the $6 million for the following projects there. Old Salem infrastructure, $500,000 to provide some additional contingency. Also potentially add some more streets. $1.5 million for parkland acquisition and or development. $1 million for new housing development projects, mainly focused on multifamily projects. $1 million for street resurfacing. And then $2 million for project contingency for those projects that I mentioned earlier, Kimberly Park, Happy Hill Park, Public Safety Center, Metal Art Drive. Looking back at street resurfacing, that $1 million, based on our current cost per mile, would get you about 4 miles of a resurfaced road. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Right out front.
Really nice mile. Really nice miles, though.
Okay. So what we have here, we have to set the set the interest rate before we sell the bonds, and we try to set it close to what we think the market is, but you will either get a discount or a premium. Rarely do you sell them right on the money. Saunders, where did she go? She back there? You hide well back there. If I'm doing my math right, we got another $25 million to sell.
We do, that's correct.
And then we'll have the whole $39 million sold. And right now, based on the first two sales, we still have about $6 million of overages to do something with.
Right.
And when do you anticipate selling the last $25 million?
Not till 2020.
Okay. I'll also
1920.
point out, and it's in here on page 3, because it has to do with my opinion on this. We have only committed, and that doesn't mean we've spent it, that simply means we've signed a contract. Now, some of those contracts are close to being finished, of not quite 60%. So we have another 40% left to go, so just so everybody understands. Those of the original projects that we told the voters we're going to do, we have 40% that we haven't signed anything with yet. And some of those are mentioned if you go above it. Happy Hills Park, Public Safety Center renovations, Old Salem Infrastructure, Kimberly Park, and Metal Art Drive. Those have not been, we're not even out for bids yet, I don't believe. At least I'm familiar with Metal Art Park.
We're close on Public Safety Center and Happy Hill.
Yeah.
So.
But we don't know. We don't know what the answer is yet. So anyway, so I'll open it up for comments. Anybody want to make a comment? Mr. Montgomery, you got your hand up first.
Yep. Just one. I think that I don't believe we're under a time constraint to make this decision, are we?
No.
We're not. And just I think in the time we are in terms of looking at bond projects and whether as you all know, I'd love to see more dollars put into housing, but I think that in the current conversations where we are really trying to see what our next needs around capital, that it's probably more advantageous for ourselves to take a look at that before we make a decision on what we do with these dollars for the long term. That's just my thought, because it could potentially open up a larger amount for investment in the future for us.
And in just a minute, we're going to cover two other general items. One has to do with future bond work. Mr. Mayor?
I just made my point just about, Mr. Chairman. We are getting ready, hopefully, to proceed and look at hard the bond issue next year. I personally like the idea of being able to issue $35 million without impacting tax rate. Mm-hmm. But I also think that maybe we should put some of this aside as a contingency, because we got these projects coming in, renovation projects, which you never know what you're going to run into there. So it might be well to have a portion of it contingency.
Mr.
I as well would like to see us hold some of this back. I do have a little bit of concern that we don't want to run into bond fatigue with our voters. I mean, we've increased property tax rates every year since I've been on council. Everything we can do to keep that to a minimum, I'm going to support.
Okay. I'm just going to go around the table. Ms. Adams?
I think we need to do to revisit our strategic plan at some point, if we have time, a mini session or something, before we do this. I think it helps us to stay on track and focus as to, again, what we said we were going to do. If you got a strategic plan, you need to keep revisiting it, even when you get some extra capital or revenue. I also think we need to understand also that we're going to have some challenges ahead of us when it comes to paying employees and health care. And I think we might want to understand what we may have to do with that as coming at us within the next year.
Okay.
Okay?
Ms. Burke, would you like to make a comment?
I was just going to say, what we have done with bonds, we can look around and see that they have been good investments. And if you're talking about another bond committee, Mayor, I think that this is what's going to be shown to them, how effective. And I think when we look around the city and the money that we spent with bond money, it's been very productive.
Thank you. Mr. Larson, I'm sorry I missed you.
No, it's quite all right.
We started.
These are all capital improvements. They're not operating. Most of the bond goes to capital improvements. We've made, as has been stated, a number of great improvements to the city. in a variety of ways, but we don't have to look far to know that we are still lacking in road maintenance. We still have major areas that are underserved in housing, underserved in parks and recreation, and we have a lot of deferred maintenance. The money that is being suggested here could go to help bridge those. The money that's being implemented in a future bond, if even a future bond can be approved, is still under discussion. I'm not suggesting that today that we approve $6 million worth of bond expenditures, but I think in the context of timing, city needs, particularly in certain wards that are underserved, I do think that we should keep this on the table and consider how this is all going to unfold in the bigger picture. What do we got, music now? Thank you. That's great.
That means your time is
up.
That means your time's up.
That was the hook. So thank you for that. I would hope that we will continue to look at this as a way to bridge and continue to improve.
Come on, Derek.
I love this. I love this.
Okay. He will. Okay.
Who is this? Who gets a pay cut? All right. Who's going to pay for the bond? That we will use this to bridge perhaps where we are now and where we want to be with the next bond.
Okay, thank you. I would just add my comments. I do think we made a commitment to the voters when they approved them to do certain things. We need to be sure we do them. The fact that we have 40% of the money that hasn't been spent, and I don't know a lot about all these. When I see the word renovation, that always concerns me. Metal Art Drive widening is in my ward, and as I said, that's a renovation, so to speak, of a road, a widening of a road. I'm curious to see how that comes out. So what I hear is a general consensus. We're glad we got a little extra money. Let's kind of wait and see how these projects roll out, and we'll know within the next 6 months or so how we're looking on them. I do like the idea. We said we're going to do this, and we're going to do it. And then and we're going to get to this in a minute, setting up another committee, and if we put together a list there, that's where I think we can pick up some of these. And I will tell you right now, I'm a strong believer in more money for road improvements. Yeah. That's one of my concerns. And we all have our own, be it a new park or whatever it may be. But what I'm hearing, there's no time constraint here. Let's just sit tight. And the staff has done a good job, and I know we'll continue to do a good job of updating us as we move forward with these projects and wait till we're a little closer and kind of see where we are. Because I can assure you we'll have a surprise somewhere. All right. That was just for information today. There's no motion there. We will now go, related to that is G2. If the Secretary will please read that.
Item G2, resolution creating a Citizens Capital Needs Committee.
Turner, you've been on all day today. They still got your name here. Would you like to, or Mr. Mayor, or somebody would like to comment on this?
No, we're a little bit ahead of staff maybe on this. We've been talking about this, and obviously most of you have submitted names to me, and of course Greg is getting us legal now, so we can do that. So very much the same process we followed in getting towards the 2014 bond issue. I think we put that together in 2010 or something, maybe or early on in the process there. I've forgotten. But I think it's great. It works so well for us. So kind of fresh eyes looking at our capital needs, come up with a suggested package. We then took that back out into the neighborhood and had 8 meetings, I think, all around the city, and then we finalized it as a council to put together the final package.
So this is simply a motion to set the committee up, and then you'll come back later with the nominees? Yep. Is that right?
Yeah, I think the mayor's planning on hopefully bringing those in September next month, so that this committee could get their work done by the end of the calendar year. So the council, in order the process for the calendar, if we're going to do a 2018 bond referendum, we need to set that item by June, I believe, is the latest.
Okay. Mr. McIntosh?
I served on this committee last time around in 2010, and it was very instructive to me, but I think it was also very good for staff to hear sort of a very broad section of the community and what they wanted, and so I think it was very purposeful. Last time around in 2010, a lot changed between that committee meeting and when we actually issued the bonds. Things got better because when we left the table at that meeting, we were thinking, well, just maybe a little bit of a bond amount, but luckily the economy got better and we were good for it. But I think it's a very worthwhile process.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? If not, can I get a motion on this?
Move for approval.
till you touch it.
We'll see.
I already got it.
You can.
You hesitated.
I'll let y'all do the heavy lifting there. We have a motion and a second to set this committee up with the understanding the mayor hopefully is going to bring us some names in a month or so. If everybody will please vote. That is approved. Thank you very much. And now we will go to the last item.
Item G3, resolution granting an extension of time to Greater Tabernacle Worship Center to satisfy the conditions of purchase of 20 acres of land located on Old Walkertown Road, authorized by City Council on March 25th, 2013, located in the Northeast Ward.
Is there any way we can get a map of this land up? I always feel like this type of stuff is good to have a map. Is there any way we could? While we're waiting, I'll look at my computer. There's no way you can take what we're looking on our screen and stick it up there? Not right now, okay.
And do it with an Apple TV.
There. Pull it down just so that everybody can see the roads. That's Motor Road and Old Walkertown Road. There you go. That's perfect. Okay. Now, Mr. Borling, if you'll give us an introduction on this, please.
Okay, I'd be happy to. Chairman Clark, Mayor, members of the council. The history of negotiations going back to 2007 with Greater Tabernacle Worship Center is included in your package. It's rather extensive. I won't go through all that, but I will bring you up to the reason the church comes to you today. In August 27, 2013, a 20-acre site on Old Walkertown Road that is shown up there was purchased by the Greater Tabernacle. One of the conditions of the sale was that Greater Tabernacle would have construction of their new facility completed and the programs for the benefit of the public implemented within 36 months of the deed filing. The required conditions have not taken place since the purchase. The restrictive covenants and conditions do provide that the City Council retains the right to extend the length of time that Greater Tabernacle has to satisfy the covenant restrictions if it chooses. Greater Tabernacle now comes to you today requesting that the City Council have an additional 3-year additional 3-year extension of time to complete the construction of the facility as is provided for in paragraph 7 of the deed of purchase. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, and also Mr. Wayne Patterson and representatives of the church are in attendance to respond if there are any questions for them.
Let me ask a few questions. How many acres is this piece of land?
20 acres right now.
20
That's
acres.
what was actually transferred.
And the church actually owns it?
Yes.
And the land that was not, I know was cut down, can you point out the land that was removed?
This is the area that was remaining. It's about 13 acres that the city still owns right here.
So it's 13 we still have. We actually sold 20.
Correct.
Okay.
That was in 2013.
Now, I'm just curious, since they own the land, if they don't do anything with it, what's our recourse?
Well, there was a 10-year time limit put on the development. They've had it since 2013. They're requesting an additional 3 years today. An additional 3 beyond that would be the maximum they could conceivably come back with. At that time, it specified that the city can reclaim the land and pay the fair market value at that time.
Any questions, comments? I'm not sure whose ward this is.
It's in mine.
In your ward, Ms. Burke, go ahead.
No,
Just a quick question on your last comment there. So if they were to, in effect, default on this purchase, we would have to buy the property back from them?
We wouldn't have to. We have the option to.
Okay. It would be our option as to whether or not. But if we wanted the land back, we would have to pay them fair market value for it. Okay. Thank you.
yes.
Ms. Burke, go ahead.
Yes, I'm just going to say that that piece of property has been sitting up there, and we don't have anyone knocking our door down trying to do something with it. It goes back to before they purchased it. In the beginning, we had, and I guess the mayor can remember this, the developer came, said he was going to put something there, did not have the finances, and we've had 2 or 3 to do that for that piece of land. And then we had a church, another church to come, and they could not do it. And then we had this church to come. And by the way, I meant to address the Apostle McCloud, who's, is she still here? Has she gone? Pastor is still here. And to me, if the church does not do what they say they're going to do, we still have an opportunity to do something ourselves. So if nobody's knocking on the door, say they want to make some development there, I don't see why we would not let them continue with their plan.
Any other questions, comments? I have a strange question. Why don't we just remove the restriction? They own the land. We've been paid for it?
Well, the property was sold to them as a nonprofit carrying out a public purpose.
Okay.
So it did not go through the upset bid procedure. And for that reason, they have duty to use that as a nonprofit would for a public purpose.
Okay.
And there was specified items that they would carry on for a public purpose. So that, because it's vacant land, has not been done. But to answer your question, there are other items that they should do and carry on related to that.
Can I ask the city attorney, we come back, it's been how many years now? 10 years? How about they come back 3 years, there's still nothing on it, and nobody wants us? Ms. Burke says,
We don't have to.
we don't have to take it, and then what happens then? I mean,
well, you could certainly go into negotiations to do another agreement once this expires. You have certain, in the item that is in your agenda packet, you have certain options. If the terms are not met, you could rescind the transaction. You could do a fair market purchase. You might decide to rescind it and consider a re-entry into a new agreement or to do something different with it. But you sort of don't have to bid against yourself.
yeah, okay.
I just want to say that I think it's important for the city to kind of maintain its options on that site. I mean, maybe 3 years from there might be somebody who would like to have it back, and we could take it back. Then there's not all that many development opportunities within the greater East Winston community, so this is a great site, and so I think we just sort of keep our string on it.
All right, Ms. Adams?
Yes, I just wanted to say that is a very strategic site for the Walkertown Road, Motor Road, Carver Road connection in that neighborhood. It's a lot of residential, old families, houses over there. And, you know, not too far from it, you have the Maisie Woodruff Library and Forsyth Tech and, you know, the churches and everything. I agree with the Mayor Pro Tem and the Mayor that we go ahead and do this and, you know, a couple of years, 2, 3 years down the road, wishing that they're hoping and praying that they can get this done. But if they're not and somebody comes along, we might have to help with this, you know. But that is a huge piece of green property there. It's beautiful. But it's a lot of cars go by there now. Mayor Pro Tem, since the Motor Road piece was done, they connect them to the North Ward. A lot of cars, a lot of cars.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Montgomery?
Just in terms, I think, in relation to other projects, I think when we look at the Goler projects and development, that it took some time for something to happen, and we saw extensions that were done, and I'm glad we did those because it resulted in being able to see, I think, good use of the property and good development. And so I think if it means extending out to try to figure out what can happen and what can come to fruition, I think is worthwhile.
Okay, so this is a 3-year extension.
Yes, sir.
All right, can I get a motion on this? Ms.
Second.
Burke is a council member of the ward, has made a motion. We have a second. Let's see what comes up. Hang tight. Please vote. Okay, that is approved. And that is the last item on the agenda, and we're actually finished. The Ms. Taylor's not here yet, but the public safety meets at 6 o'clock. I'm assuming they will meet at 6 today. Any other items to bring before the committee from anyone here? If not, we will stand adjourned.
After that?